The aftermath of the incident at Union Square left the colony shell-shocked. 50 colonists gone in an instant. However, the bureaucratic response was not what most people expected, and the colony's leadership had planetside security baffled. Sergeant Neumann once again presented the situation to Hanford Confucia, noting that the colony, through the last 2.5 years of operation, had experienced only 3 deaths, all of them work-related, but in the short period of time after discovering the marker, they had had 65. Confucia once again shut down Neumann, remarking that 52 of the deaths had been self-inflicted, and that he wasn't about to jeopardize the entire operation, and that even if he could or would, no longer had the authority to do so, as the USG Ishimura had arrived in orbit, and Captain Benjamin Mathias now had full jurisdiction of the operation. Unbeknownst to Sergeant Neumann at the time, Captain Mathias, a long-standing member of the church, had also ordered that the bodies of each dead colonist were to be transferred to the Ishimura immediately. While he was left dissatisfied with the lack of action from Confucia, Sergeant Neumann was optimistic about the marker having been transported off of the colony, as he saw the marker as the source of the chaos that had unfolded over the last couple of weeks. He was certain things would finally change for the better. However, a sudden phone call from a technician would quickly change his optimism, as somewhere else in the colony, in a maintenance shaft 40 miles from the main hub, cancerous tumor-like growths had been spotted a few days earlier on the air vents leading into the colony. Writhing and pulsing, the organism that initially had been nothing but a smudge had now grown and spread itself like a black mold, clinging to walls, ceilings, and whatever it could latch itself onto, infesting a vast majority of the maintenance shafts. Alarmed by its smell, its growth, and foreign nature, Sergeant Neumann ordered it all incinerated, and once again desperately appealed to Confucia to take action, emphasizing that they had missed something in the initial survey of the planet, that something foreign, something hostile, was attacking the colony. Confucia seemed distant, hopeless. He remarked that there was nothing he could do. Captain Mathias had evoked the no-fly zone on the planet, meaning that nothing could leave or into the atmosphere, which meant that the planet crack would proceed as scheduled, no matter what. Among the colonists affected by the influence of the marker, Dr. Tom Scarello had noticed that the absence and removal of the marker hadn't had a positive effect on his patients or the crew. On the contrary, he noted that 20% of the colony now suffered from psychic problems, and that the former unstable patients, the ones that had been in direct contact with the marker, had now become psychotic, stricken with morbid depression and obsessive-compulsive behavior, all of them scribbling the same incoherent phrases, signs, symbols, and DNA sequences on the walls of their holding cells. What immediately caught any sane person's eyes within these cells would be the phrases, "All men be praised," and "The marker will set us free." An analyst from PSIC had been studying the marker, looking for patterns and connections between the ramblings and scribblings of the psychotic crew members and the dark symbols on the marker. And it was in this moment, at 1200 hours, at the time when the planet crack commenced, that she would finally see the pattern. Life after death meant life through death. With the colony having worked for weeks to establish the operation, the order finally came from Ishimura to pop the cork. However, upon initiation, as the gravity tethers linked and the surface of the planet broke, a violent electromagnetic pulse erupted from the surface of the planet, disabling all electronics and communication planetside, sending the entire colony into a blackout. And from the darkness came death. Having slowly been altered molecularly by the presence of the marker, the corpses from the incidents of the last few weeks would rise from their dormant states in the morgue and wander off into the colony. It would seem that the marker was a precursor for the living, having intentionally guided the colonists affected towards death with insanity and depression. The intentions of the marker was to reanimate the necrotic cells of the deceased, to create a more efficient method of harvesting organic material. These harvesters, however, was unlike anything anyone could have ever prepared for. Within minutes of the planet crack, the rampant infection ran loose within the colony. Room after room, corridor after corridor of the infected tore through the crew, decimating and eviscerating any living organism in front of them. However, the dead didn't stay dead for long, as the killed and deceased would almost immediately be resurrected, brought back by yet another unspeakable abomination to prey upon the living. The very life after death that the unitologists had been awaiting. Panic erupted like wildfire as crowds of people were decimated, torn to pieces in the darkness of the colony by this obscene threat that grew greater by the second. With hope dwindling, the crowds of survivors ran to the trams, looking to catch a ride to the emergency shuttles. However, the congregation that had formed within the station would suffer catastrophic casualties, as the dead roaming the colony found them bunched up, unarmed and unprotected. Over the screams of pain and the sounds of death among the endless crowd of panicking people, Sergeant Neumann managed to gather a group of survivors before rushing them to the shuttle bay on foot. Hoping to escape their doom by leaving the planet, the last remaining people in the colony bunched together in the hangar for the shuttles. However, the understaffed PSEC, combined with the frightened horde of colonists rushing into the bay, led to an unorganized emergency response where crowds of people were jammed into the shuttles, severely overloading them. Struggling to break orbit, the pilot of one particular shuttle decided to return to the bay. However, in blind panic, the pilot was attacked by crew members, refusing to allow him to go back to the surface. In the commotion, the pilot lost control of the shuttle, which crashed back down into the shuttle bay. The collision killing the majority of the survivors and destroying the few remaining shuttles in the process. Grounded, stranded, and hopelessly outnumbered, Sergeant Neumann recorded a final video warning anyone on the receiving end never to venture near Aegis VII, ending the video stating that they might not like what they would find. But this is not how our story ends. Far from it. For somewhere else in the colony, among the horrible atrocities unfolding, a single miner by the name of Colin Barrow had gone unnoticed and managed to stay out of sight of the infected of the marker. Having made it back to his shack, he was looking for his wife Jennifer, one of the original surveyors that had discovered the marker. Here he would find her half naked, driven insane by the effects of the marker, having littered every wall, floor, and ceiling, as well as her own body in bloody symbols. With a catatonic whisper, Jennifer stated that they need our bodies before she cut her own throat. With the infected roaming the colony, Colin, heartbroken, traumatized, and desperate, rushed to the only glider left within his sector. In his arms he carried the corpse of his wife, wanting more than anything to bring her back home. However, as he primed the glider and prepared for takeoff, a single infected, known as an infector, which sole purpose is to reanimate necrotic cells, managed to board the vessel without Colin noticing. As Colin left the colony in the glider and broke into orbit, he was immediately hailed by the Ishimura. He was informed of the no-fly zone and ordered to return to the surface immediately. Colin, however, had no intention of ever going back. Captain Matthias ordered all bays to be locked, but the small glider proved too fast and barreled towards Ishimura at high speed. But seconds before Colin approached the docking bay, the mangled corpse of Jennifer charged at him, immediately killing him on the spot, and the unpiloted glider managed to slip through the hangar doors and crash land within the Ishimura. Hey there, Hazmat here. That concludes the story of the Aegis VII colony. However, the following episodes will take place on the USG Ishimura, so make sure to stay tuned for more. As always, a big thanks goes out to the Hunters Lounge on Patreon, specifically Jim and L. Bob, Corey Peterson, Derivative, Sir Bottoms, The Loaf of Bread, Tom Hengst, Dominic Collars, Tim Wright, Jane Doe, Ghosty, Claire and Leon, Gabe Benavides, Riz TB, Stas Biestek, Nightingale 4, and Nebula. The Patreon page does not only support me as a creator, they also receive exclusive benefits, help me decide on future content, and you can join it for as little as $1 a month. Link is in the description below. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.